when you're like, I want to do a German accent, do you have like a word or a phrase that you think of in order to start doing the accent? Like when I want to speak in an English accent, I have to go, Harry Potter. Every time. Otherwise, I can't do an English accent.
No, I don't think so. I think there must be a no or ja to be given somewhere early on. But
interesting.
No.
See, if I'm going to do German, I got to be like, 1, 2, 3. I don't know what number 4. You're listening to Leedom to Life, where it's our prerogative to explore what it means to be authentically human and fully alive. We have far more questions than answers, but believe that extraordinary answers can be found in the ordinariness of a journey. I'm your host, Emily Leedom. Hello, friends, and welcome to this episode of Leedom to Life. I am back with who is becoming a regular guest, and I'm just delighted about it. But this is a topic that I've wanted to address for a while, and as I was thinking about, gosh, who would come on and have a beautiful conversation about this with me, Chris Burgwald, you came to my mind right away.
Thanks, Emily.
Welcome back to the podcast.
I was prepared for you to be like, I couldn't get her, so I went with Chris instead.
Yeah, I couldn't get my first top 5 choices, so I landed on Burgwald.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
Thank you.
Introduce yourself for those that maybe haven't heard you on before.
Yeah.
Tell us who you are.
So I usually start with do instead of be. So I'm going to start with be and then go to do.
Okay.
Are you with me,
I
Emily?
know. Who do I be?
am. I'm a Minnesotan man, husband to Jermaine for 22 years. Jermaine and I have 5 kids. She's from Ohio. I'm from central Minnesota, but our kids are all eastern South Dakotans.
For life.
For life. And what I do, I'm the director of discipleship formation with the Diocese of Sioux Falls. So been here since 2002 doing, I can't. I get to do amazing things. I was going to say I do amazing things in evangelization. That's going to sound wrong.
Not that I'm the greatest person alive or anything, but
there you go.
That's it.
Well, ask me a great Leedom question, a leading Leedom question.
What's your favorite cup of coffee right now?
Cheers. The espresso.
Is that the answer?
No, I've been drinking a medium roast Costa Rican bean that I get from Jay Anders Cappuccino Cabin. Go tell him I sent
12th
you.
Street, 10th Street,
Yep,
12th Street?
To ish.
Oh, it turns into one or the other. I can't remember which one it is.
It does. 10th Street, in front of Pizza Ranch, little Cappuccino cabin shack thing, with just a little bit of heavy whipping cream.
Oh, snap.
Thanks to your mom, I know that actually has fewer calories than half and half.
Really?
Yes. Gina Hoffman gave me that.
Shout out. She would know that.
Yeah.
She's good about things like that. Did you know that there's such thing, and then we'll get to the topic. Do you know there's such thing as it white coffee beans? Blonde coffee beans?
Blonde. Yeah,
blonde coffee beans?
Yeah, for sure.
That have more caffeine.
Yeah, I haven't tried them. I think Starbucks a few years ago had their blonde roast.
Huh. Shout out to Brian Stye, who taught me that was a thing.
Brian Stye did?
Yeah.
Really?
Well, he's like not a coffee drinker, but he brought me a cup of coffee last week because he failed to show up to our coffee meeting 2 days ahead of time. I was like, you are making up for it in space, my friend.
Well done, Brian.
But I was like, okay, I would love a white mocha. And he was like, white coffee beans or white chocolate? And I'm like, what the heck is white coffee beans? Never heard of that. Okay, so Chris, here's the deal. How's that for
that's a hard segue for Leedom to Life.
I know. Okay, so here's the deal. The last 2 episodes, we've talked about kind of the 2 of the 3 pillars or 2 of the 3 components of a penitential season. So we talked about almsgiving, we talked about prayer, and I've had a desire to talk about fasting actually for a long time because of the all the rage with intermittent fasting.
Yes.
That kind of came up, what was that, like a year ago? I think I really started to hear about it. I don't love fasting, but I want to have a conversation about it. And I thought of you because I know that this has really been a big part of your own journey in the last couple of months or last 6 months or whatever.
Oh, it's been a half a year of... No.
A full half a year. So, okay, first of all, tell us a little bit about kind of your introduction to the idea of fasting, like from years and years and years ago and how it has evolved, especially more recently.
So are you, because there is a particular thing a couple of years ago, I can't remember if I shared that with you. I don't know if you're alluding to that, which I'm going to talk about, or do you mean just like when I first heard of it?
No, allude to the thing. I don't know what you're talking about.
All right. So before I get into this, I need to be really clear about something for you and for the listeners. Normally, this won't surprise you at all. Normally, I am like, when I find something that really resonates deeply, I'm pretty quick. This is a fault. I'm pretty quick to say, you need to do this too.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that.
You're not that way.
I'm not going to do that with this topic. So I got to be very careful here because I do feel that's, but I want to say right up front that this is something that I feel that I've been, well, to be honest, called to. And if for anybody who's listening to this, if this resonates, great. But I have to fight hard and be very clear that this is not something, like there are some things that, the nature of who I am, what I do, I'm going to say, this is for everybody. How I would say that as Christians, we are called to fast, as Catholics, particularly during certain times. But what does that look like throughout our life? I want to be, does that make sense?
Yes.
Just as a
yes.
caveat. So, the specific thing that I didn't know if you were alluded to or not, about 3 years ago, the Lord invited me in a very gentle way. It was an invitation. The Lord invited me to fast for certain intentions. That's a thing that you can do. I'm offering a spiritual sacrifice for the sake of somebody else. And I knew who it was, but I don't want to speak to that right now. So I was gently invited by the Lord to fast, and I very gently declined the invitation.
I love the honesty.
I
love the honesty.
Boy, the Lord is, yeah, but and literally, I mean, it was not that long ago, and there's still some, I'm kind of ashamed to admit it, but it's a real thing too. Yeah. Lord, I really don't, this is basically, I don't really see the value in that. Like I'll do other things for that person.
But that's just not really me.
Well, no, I just didn't think it'd be effective. Yeah. So what I told God that, I've got a better idea.
Thank you for asking.
Yes, I got a better idea. I've got a better idea. What?
I'll keep thinking about it.
No, I know. I'll do this instead.
That's so great.
Thanks for the idea, but I'm going to do this instead.
Yeah. Okay.
And
so this was like 3 years ago.
Tenderness. Yep. And then a couple years later, I was going through for my day job, going through a book on the teaching of the saints and growing in holiness with some people, talking with somebody about this book in particular. And Teresa of Avila talks about what a great sin it is when the Lord asks small things of us and we don't do it. Oh, and
you knew it right away.
I knew right away. So here's the thing. I had not,
That's what we call
3 years
conviction.
ago, like in Catholic, like if we get like inside baseball, technical term, I did not commit a mortal sin, right? I didn't do something wrong when I declined this gentle invitation.
Yeah.
But I did. Yeah. I said no to my Creator. And I realized this like 2 years ago. I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
So, all right, I got to take this serious. So I started slowly doing some things, and the other thing I'm just going to be open and transparent with some things that I've done, not because everybody else should do them. This is just my own
What's worked
journey.
for you?
And years ago, I gave up coffee on Fridays. Yes, I did, together with a good friend.
Really?
Renee Leach and I.
Do you still do that?
No.
Okay.
No.
The time has passed.
That time has passed. I gave coffee for a long time because Catholics are invited to do penance every Friday.
Oh, yeah, because you're always a little more tired on Fridays.
But I quit doing that 2 years ago. I'm like, all right, and I tried to bargain with him then too. I was at the chapel at my parish. It was a Friday morning. I was in my chapel with a sealed cup of coffee, and I was drinking. And Chris, I want you to give coffees on Friday again. No, I'll do this.
I have a better idea.
And this time, Chris. And to be clear, I didn't hear these, but this is in my heart.
Interior
Yep.
awareness.
There was okay. So I went back to no coffee on Fridays. As fast forward, probably the summer of summer of 2020, just become really aware of the need to pray and do penance for somebody. And it was through that this idea of fasting then started to come in. Now, I had heard years ago, I heard about fasting, but Emily, this also won't surprise you at all. Fasting, how do you do that? Where's the book? So I'm looking for the book.
You're looking for the book that has
for
the
years.
answers?
I couldn't find the book.
That made it made sense to you. Made it make
would
sense
have
to you.
explained like, okay, what exactly does
Like the
Christian,
real why?
Yeah, the Christian fasting mean?
Okay.
I was going through the books of one of our priests who had passed away recently. Came across a book written in the late 80s by a French monk, published in English in the early 90s. Read it over Lent, and it was That was, for me was, so I'm praying and doing penance for somebody and just become more and more aware of the Lord inviting me to consider the fast for those other intentions and now for this new intention. And over the course of Lent, reading this, and then I heard about intermittent fasting. And so ironically, I get to the end of Lent. So it's the end of Lent and the start of the Easter season when I begin to actually fast. So I can unpack what that means for me and so on, but that's...
Can you tell me what... do you remember what the book was called?
No. Black and red cover.
Can you even name like what it was that...
So it was just clarity around what fasting historically has meant, at least in the Catholic tradition, which make clear, because we have the kind of rules like on Good Friday and Ash Wednesday and Good Friday, 2 meals that add up to like what does that mean? And then we're invited to do it, but what does that look like, especially for a layman, right? As I'm not a monk, I'm not a priest, not religious life. What does this look? How can you do this? What does it mean, and how do you do it? And with a man in his late 40s, married, 5 kids, want to be available to my family and to my work, So what does it look like? And I had all sorts of, to be honest, misconceptions. So
like what?
Well, so long story short, the point of the book is what this monk did, and he argues this is historically what fasting has looked like. 1 meal a day. But it's a full meal. And this is one of the misperceptions that I had. He wasn't eating gruel. He wasn't eating watered down potatoes and cabbage or, whatever. It was like all the major food groups, etc., even a little bit of wine, as part of his 1 meal a day. And that for him, what is what he in his prayer and research, what he found is this is traditionally what the fast looked like in the early centuries of Christianity. So he is inviting religious communities in particular to embrace this. To embrace this is what
as like an
fast.
everyday way of life.
Yep, except for Sundays. For him, except for Sundays, every day. So for me, experimenting with that, I started by breakfast. I love breakfast, but breakfast was already hit and miss for me. So I started pushing back lunch till about 3, and then literally, I think it was Holy Week, maybe the week before, maybe Easter week, somewhere around there. I said, all right, I'm going to try it, and I went down to 1 meal a day, dinner. So I'm eating with my family, and then on Sundays I'll have a little bit more.
Eat more normally.
Yep.
What's been the benefit?
There's been an obvious benefit.
You're like the incredible shrinking man.
So, and this became a thing for me. The original input. I've tried to lose weight before.
Yeah.
It's never stuck. This was sparked by a desire to give up something for a spiritual purpose, to do prayer and penance for some people. If it weren't for that, the intermittent fasting side, the physical thing, wouldn't have worked. But the most obvious benefit has been significant weight loss. I mean, depending on the day, like at the most from my highest when I weighed myself to the lowest I've been, over 60 pounds. But I'm where I want to maintain right now. But it was never just about the weight loss, but that was a great side benefit. I think the more subtle, tangible, and these are some of the things that I learned when I read the monk's book. So especially in our culture, which is so materialistic and so consumeristic, the importance of gaining control over the most fundamental desires, passions, but the desires that we have is essential. I came to see. And for me, I love food, and I love to, and I still want to eat the way I did when I was 18, 20, 22. I can't anymore, but it was just a recognition that I need to, if I want to grow in my spiritual life, become more mature as a Christian, that I need to rein in my desire for food.
What would you say to someone who's listening to that and feeling like, oh my gosh, that seems so kind of barbaric or regulatory or what's the word I'm looking for? Like rigid or that kind of thing.
Yeah. So a couple of things. The first thing that came. So I'll talk about the rigidity. But this is not because food is bad. It's because food is so darn good. So I'm not like today before we're recording this. So normally it's a weekday. So I would typically just have the one meal a day. But we
went out for birthday
lunch. So I had a bread bowl of soup. So there's some, and this is something I had to be very clear with myself about, and the Lord was clear to me, Chris, don't be, because I have a rigidity,
almost like a
scrupulosity
sort of approach.
I have that.
Yeah.
Be free around this. Like if you're with other people, don't be obvious.
Don't be awkward.
Right. Exactly. It's hard for me to do, Emily. So with the rigidity, but there was that for me, but there was also, like, food is really good. So I enjoyed the chicken wild rice almondine bread bowl soup that I had today.
Shout out Blarney Stone. It was top notch.
It was really good. The little piece of chocolate you gave me before I came down. Normally I wouldn't eat that, but you offered it to me. Actually, you did. Well, yeah, you kind of.
Well, I took a bite of it and was like, "This is disgusting. Do you want this?"
It was really good. And then on Sundays a little bit more. So this is not saying food is bad and I'm trying to avoid food. This is saying food is really good, but my desire for food is a little bit out of control, and I've got to rein it in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you have found freedom? Because really the goal of like self-mastery is freedom, right? Yep. So we work on these things, we're attentive to these things because it actually bears increasing freedom rather than being a slave to the impulse of I want to buy whatever I want when I want to eat whatever I want to do whatever I want when I want. Like the discipline, the importance of discipline, and we see this in like sports ads and that kind of thing, is like discipline is important because it actually allows us to be more of who we desire to be. It actually allows greater freedom. Has that been your experience yet? Do you feel like you have found
so I'm not
freedom?
Completely there, like especially when, like, to be honest, it's like when there's the snacking thing where there's just like food out, like oftentimes like at parties. It's really hard for me to limit myself when you can just graze, right?
Yeah.
But like when it comes to, it was unbelievably, after a few, to be honest, and this is many people's experience when you look at the intermittent fasting literature. After just a few weeks, a couple months at most, I was out of the habit of eating 3 times a day and into the habit of eating just once a day. And it wasn't that hard. I was surprised.
Like you weren't even that, it's not like you were starving.
No, yeah. And there's the
hungry.
science, like there's a hormone that's released, and it's released based on your habits.
Yeah.
So once I'd broken the habit of eating a meal around 12 or 1, it took a few weeks, maybe a couple months, but that hormone stopped being released. And so the desire to eat went away.
Do you feel freedom outside of just even like the impulse
the other
towards
ways.
Food? Like, has that, what
so
sort
that's
of other
growing.
fruit?
That's growing. That's been one of the fruits that's been increasing. That was a motivation for me. That's one of the things. Like, so the idea of going back to what this monk writes about, like this is the first, for most people, not necessarily everybody, but for most people, this is the first step towards first mastery, he argues. To control, because this is one of those most fundamental human impulses. Yeah. So if I want to have freedom and mastery in other areas, most of us, including definitely myself, have to start with this one. So I've pretty much mastered this one, and I am starting to see then like the other ways in which I've found freedom. To be honest, right now, I mean, if I were in your shoes, I'd say like, for what? Like what? I can't give an example.
I see it in you. Like I see it in the ways that you engage even.
Yeah.
I think the last time you were on, actually, I brought up an example where like something happened at work that I was irritated about, mad about. And I was like, Chris, can you believe this happened? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And you just didn't take the bait.
Yeah.
And to me, that's an example of the place that you have found increasing freedom is like, you wear things more loosely, not because they're not important.
Well, my clothes are,
Yeah, besides your clothes. Besides your pants, which you need to, bring in a little bit. But like that's an area that I think I know you pretty dang well. So, and I don't know that the average person, would see that right away. But
no, I think that's definitely the case. I think I was already growing in that, but that's definitely been helped by. So for me, and there was a specific instance that I've shared with many people, I think including you, years ago, had a conversation with a coworker, and out of that, like in the conversation, I want to call something like impulsive, like not quite rash, but a rash tendency in me that definitely is being abated.
Do you think part of that's age?
Probably.
You know what I mean?
Probably.
Because I feel like that's probably a bit of like the maturity component as well, but it's all connected.
Because that's about
Maturity brings
reining in your
freedom.
desires
Yeah.
and impulses and having mastery over that, like when you have the emotional reaction. But okay, no, I'm not gonna. So there's definitely a general increasing sense of interior freedom and peace. To be honest, like do I still get frustrated? Yeah, but not as much as not as much as I used to. Part of that was probably just age and maturity, but I'm very confident that part of that is also the fruit of self mastery, beginning with my appetite for food.
I think I've often restricted the idea of fasting to Lent.
Yeah. Just
in my own experience and in my own, my own formation, perhaps. And this Advent for me has opened up some additional like visions of what that can look like, or an additional imagination, a growing imagination of what that can look like. I think I shared a couple episodes ago that I gave up alcohol during Advent. And and I told somebody the other day, I was walking out of Holy Spirit, and it was for the feast day of the Immaculate Conception. And Father Tony was like, go do something fun for the feast day. I was like, oh, trust me.
We talked about this that day.
Did we? Oh, yeah.
Yes, we did.
That's right. But I was laughing with a friend about it later, because I'm like, I think I anticipated that this experience of giving up alcohol, or if I'm during Lent, I'm giving up chocolate or whatever, that it's going to be so fruitful, and I just am going to be like bilocating because of like the holy, virtue that I've experienced through the gift of whatever, blah, blah, blah. And that has not been my experience. Go ahead. What?
I think it was just this morning. I totally share that, like, you think it's going to be this way. The way our Lord, this is around. So Advent, right? God came as a little helpless baby, right? Not with power. And we still, for me at least, this is the connection, maybe not quite what you were thinking, but still this idea that when we do something, it's going to be like big.
Yeah.
And that's just not how the Lord works.
No.
He's quiet.
Yeah.
He's small, literally a little baby. I mean, you're a mom, you've had 3 of them. I mean, they're little.
Right.
And then the reality, that's how he works. But even so, even though I've been walking the Christian walking with him for decades now, I still have this thought that it's going to be big.
Yes.
Fireworks.
Yes.
And sometimes that happens.
Yeah, every once in a while.
But not usually.
But by and large, it's in the little way.
Yep.
Yeah, 100%. And that's why, I mean, it was comical, because I really I had kind of gotten caught up in this, because the invitation was so clear. Like, it came in a very powerful moment of prayer for me of like, I want you to give up something for Advent. And I chose alcohol. And I mean, it was such a powerful experience of prayer, the invitation to fast, from something during Advent, that I think I really anticipated. And maybe I'll come on a podcast in 3 weeks and be like, oh my gosh, this was the most fruitful thing that I've ever done. Right now, it's been really like, it's been simple. It's been like kind of unnoticed. It's been like, other than talking about it in the podcast, like I haven't really experienced great movement or profound anything from it. I just haven't really experienced anything in connection to it. And yet, like, the invitation is still there.
Right.
And so even if the fruit is not readily, and I think I have to trust that saying no in the little things. This is really interesting. Actually, I'm just like putting this together. I got a speaking request from a group to come to their parish this spring. And I said no. Because, not because I don't love doing it, not because I wouldn't love to do it, but I've been so convicted about my yes being a more full yes. Like the things that I say yes to, I want it to really, I want to be all in. And this recognition of God has me at Catholic Family Services. He has me, being a mom, being a wife, being a friend. And I'm kind of at my capacity of yes and what I can say yes to. And so there's like, wow, this is like wow, it has been really fruitful. But this recognition of like practicing that no has allowed me, it gave me the courage to say no to something else that I would have loved to do, not because it was a bad thing. Not because it was disordered, not because it wouldn't be helpful to me to go speak at the parish or whatever, but like I have to learn how to say no. I have to learn how to say no.
It's an ordering of our desires because all of our desires fundamentally are for good things. The problem comes because we misorder those desires. We move them up the priority chain when they shouldn't be up the priority. So you're a fantastic presenter. But for right now, what you just described, like that's not the thing. So that desire to be able to be give an effective, fruitful presentation that would be, no doubt, would be helpful to people. But that's not what the Lord is asking of you right now. So that desire, that desire has to be ordered, and it's at a threshold where you had to say no.
Yeah. Wow, I just am like that. I hadn't thought about that until this moment.
Right.
So I got to sit with that for a little while.
Amen. Well, you sit with it while I talk.
Okay. Go ahead.
So this is just a little bit of freedom, like going back to the basic sense. So our good friends down the HR department here, they always had that candy dish out, right? And a year ago, I would have walked by that and grabbed a thing or 10 probably out of it. Not literally, but now, so this is free. So I talked, this was a few years ago, talking with a friend who's a recovered alcoholic. And he has complete freedom, right? He can see a bottle of beer or a can of beer. And
there's
totally
no
free.
impulse.
No impulse. And that's how I am towards the HR candy dish.
You don't crave it anymore.
No. Again, as I did today, I'll still have a sweet. And there are still times where I probably overindulge. But my default is I don't need that. And so there's freedom for me in that. So I can choose to have it. Yesterday, Immaculate Conception. So I chose to have a brandy eggnog. So on a Sunday, I might choose to, but I'm choosing it not because there's this out of control desire that just takes over.
Wow. Can I go back to something you said a bit ago? Earlier on about there's one obvious fruit of it being weight loss and that you had tried weight loss in different ways before and really just not had a lot of fruit or not had a lot of success, I guess. You have said to me it had to be for something greater or something to that effect. Like I had to incorporate the spiritual component or I was not getting anywhere. Can you say a little bit more about that? Because I could see where there's a lot of people that are listening that are like, I want to be healthy. I want to be, I want to be physically healthy. I want to be strong, all of those things, but are maybe like in Christmas time, we're always aware of this, right? Because we're just like surrounded by cookie platters everywhere.
Exactly.
But what was happening in you that it was like, okay, this was the
So
the game changer.
Yeah, you're right. Like the importance of
because it had to be partly motivating, right?
It had. So it should be enough that we are that our bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit, and we're called to be good stewards of this gift of ourselves that we've been given. And so I should be a good steward of my body, which means I should be healthy. That should be enough.
Should be.
But it wasn't. Should I be healthy so I can play around with my kids or whatever without, yeah, that wasn't enough. That's one piece. The other thing too is what I do now is a way of life. And you hear about this all the time, like where a quote unquote diet can't just be a temporary, it will not work if it's a temporary thing. So people who try all the fad diets or even legitimate diets, but they do it to lose the weight and then they stop and then they regain the weight. This was for me not about, I'm going to do this until I lose weight. This was a response to an invitation from the Lord that, as far as I know, like He has not put an end date on this.
Is that daunting to you?
No, for me, it's necessary and freeing.
Free.
This is because I can, and I've said this. This has been a grace. Like this kind of goes back to my fundamental thing at the beginning.
Yeah.
This has been a gift that He's given me that I've asked for, even though I didn't want it either, to be able to live this way. But the idea of me living this way for the rest of my life does not
overwhelm you. Doesn't stress you out.
No, this is just how I'm going to live. And I think it allows me on those days where, I would love to pig out or have something earlier. So I have not had a sausage McMuffin in 6 months. Every now and then we share an affinity for sausage McMuffins. And I thought about, I should just stop. No, because this is my life. Now, again, I'm not rigid. There's some freedom there. But I haven't I've had brunch.
The thought comes and then the second thought comes and you have freedom to say no.
Yep. So the importance of this being a matter of a way of life for me was a big thing. But then it had to be, I'm not just doing this for me. I'm doing this for other people who I care about. And just the reality, this really does. And the Lord says that there's this beautiful scene, and this was one of the big things a couple of years ago that also came to my mind when I was reconsidering that gentle invitation that I gently declined. Some things can only be cast out by prayer and fasting. And just spiritual warfare was part of what happened 2 years ago, and just the recognition there's a lot of spiritual warfare going on. And our response, I can pray, but the Lord Himself said there are times when we also need to fast.
Yeah. In our final time, can you talk a little bit about joy? Has this brought you joy?
It's a good question. Not because I'm definitely pausing here. Not because it hasn't. I'm just trying to articulate. I don't know. Has it?
I think my fear with fasting sometimes, and even conversations around fasting, even the invitation to it, the encouragement for other people to do it, is, and I kind of alluded to this with one of my questions earlier, but that it can come off so rigid, it can come off almost like oppressive, sort of thing. But it's not. I mean, I'm sitting across from you. We just had, before we started recording, the most lively, joyful conversation of my week. So I know, because I can see it in you, a profound experience of joy. But that would have been there 5 years ago before before fasting even started. But I think we have to look at these things through the context of joy, or through just kind of that eternal picture, right? Otherwise, I think it has the tendency to come off scrupulous, rigid, oppressive.
If I hadn't told you, and if the weight loss hadn't been there, and it had to be there, but if I'd never told you and started here, however I got to this weight loss going forward, if we had this conversation, if I hadn't told you that I'd been invited to and finally was responding to the invitation to fast, or if it hadn't been obvious because of its physical implications, would I have seen more down and dour than I
No.
was 5. No. So I don't know that it's obviously more. I mean, I'm just by nature pretty exuberant. You know that. It certainly hasn't lessened. I think it's probably deepened the quiet joy. So that goes back to the freedom and peace thing. So I think there's probably an increase if we can distinguish forms of joy by disposition. I'm like the outgoing, bubbly, whatever. I have that by nature a good bit, but the quieter joy,
A peace.
the desire, and again, this was always there too, but a couple nights ago, so the tree is up at our house. The reclining chair now is in the corner, and I invited Mercedes, who's in 4th grade, to climb into my lap, and I had my phone with Christmas music playing quietly, and a glass of brandy eggnog. So my arm around my daughter, phone sitting here, she and I both listening to music, looking at the tree, and me sipping this drink. Could I have done that a year ago? Yeah. Is it different this year? Yeah.
It's different this year.
It's different this year.
Beautiful.
Amen.
Before we end, Chris, I ask every guest that comes on Leedom to Life, what's a question that you have been pondering? As you know, having been on the show before, but I want to know, Mr. Dr. Chris Burgwald, Dr. Mr.
But either way,
Chris Burgwald, STD.
yes, I am.
What does this stand for?
Sacred Theology Doctorate.
Sacred Theology Doctorate.
Duh.
So classic. What's a question you've been pondering?
We don't have time for me to get. It's definitely connected to this whole conversation. John the Baptist had a huge role in my finally responding to the Lord's invitation to fast. But the question is, who is John the Baptist for me?
To you or for you?
Both.
Who is the voice? Like, who is the voice crying out in the desert?
No, sorry.
For you?
John the Baptist, the man who is alive in the Lord.
Yeah.
Wants me for something.
And you don't know yet.
I don't know if there's a specific thing, but John was an ascetic. John was an evangelist. And there's a liturgical dimension to him too. And I'm trying to figure out how those 3 things embodied in this man, that means something for me. So who is John the Baptist? Who is the intersection of asceticism, evangelism, and liturgy and contemplation? He is that, but he's also real. He's not just an idea.
He's a man.
And there's something, the Lord has something for me, John.
What a beautiful question to ponder.
Amen.
Next time you come on, you can tell us the answer.
Hopefully.
If you find it. Oh, man. Friends, I hope that you learned something. I hope that this inspired you in your own journey to continue to grow more deeply in relationship with God, in deeper self-mastery, knowledge of yourself, oriented towards freedom as the end goal. So please share this episode with a friend. We'll see you next week.
Fear. For fear. Fear. 16 av døgn. So, but no, October.
Have you seen The Winter Soldier?
Is
that what it's called?
Winter Soldier.
I think that was really good.
I've rewatched the elevator fight scene probably dozens of times at this point.
Really?
Oh my gosh.
You're kind of obsessive about things.
No, but no. Listen. Chris, so the way that I got goosebumps right now.
Oh my gosh. Okay, let's go. Let's go.
The
we haven't started yet. It's fine.
Liar!
You liar!